Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the Earth Defense Force vessel ED's Resilience. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines and the gentle beeping of computer systems. Jake had been patrolling this sector of space for 3 months without seeing any real action. His crew was getting restless, and he could feel it. The ship's communication officer, a young woman named Lisa Harper, suddenly straightened at her station. Her fingers flew across the control panel as she adjusted her headset. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal. It's coming from the asteroid belt near Kepler 442. Jake leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of signal, Lisa?" "It's from the Zilani trade ship, called Harmony's Voice. They're under attack by Korthok raiders. 3 ships by the sound of it." Lisa's voice was tense as she continued listening to the transmission. "Captain, they're asking for immediate assistance. They say they have no weapons and can't defend themselves." The bridge fell silent for a moment. Everyone knew about the Korthok raiders. They were brutal pirates who attacked merchant vessels throughout this part of the galaxy. They took what they wanted and often killed anyone who got in their way. Pete Collins, the ship's chief engineer, looked up from his station. "Captain, we're about 20 minutes away at full speed. If we push the engines hard, we might make it." In 15, Jake didn't hesitate. Lisa sent a message to the Zilani ship. "Tell them help is coming. Pete, give me everything you've got." The ship's engines roared to life as the ED's Resilience changed course toward the asteroid belt. Jake could feel the vibration through the deck plates as Pete pushed the engines beyond their normal limits. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for what might be their first real battle. Dr. Amy Foster, the ship's science officer and expert on alien cultures, moved to stand beside Jake's chair. "The Zilani are peaceful traders. They don't carry weapons on their ships. If the Korthok are attacking them, it's probably for their cargo and maybe to take prisoners." Jake's jaw tightened. The Korthok were known for their slave trade as much as their piracy. "How long until we reach them?" 14 minutes, sir," Pete called out. "Lisa, are you still getting signals from the Zilani ship?" Lisa nodded, her face pale. "Yes, sir, but they're getting weaker. I think they're taking damage." The next 14 minutes felt like hours. Jake watched the tactical display as they approached the asteroid belt. The Resilience was a military vessel built for combat, but it was designed to patrol and defend Earth's shipping lanes. They had never faced 3 Korthok destroyers at once. "Dropping out of faster-than-light travel in 3, 2, 1, announced the navigation officer. The stars shifted on the main screen as the ship returned to normal space. Immediately, the tactical display lit up with contacts. 3 large Korthok ships surrounded a much smaller Zilani vessel. The trade ship was clearly damaged, with pieces of debris floating around it. "They're firing on the Zilani ship," Lisa reported. The Harmony's Voice is barely holding together. Jake could see laser fire streaking between the ships on the display. The Korthok destroyers were taking their time, probably enjoying the hunt. The Zilani ship was trying to escape, but it was badly damaged and much slower than its attackers. "Captain, the Korthok haven't noticed us yet," said the tactical officer. "We're still outside their sensor range." Jake stood up from his chair. His training kicked in, and his mind became clear and focused. 3 enemy ships were attacking innocent traders. People were dying while he watched. There was only one choice to make. Battle stations. Charge all weapons. Target the lead Korthok ship. The bridge lights dimmed as the ship's power was redirected to weapons and shields. Red warning lights began flashing, and an alarm sounded throughout the ship. Every crew member knew what those signals meant. Weapons charged and ready. "Captain," reported the tactical officer, "take us in, full speed." The Resilience shot forward like an arrow. The Korthok ships were so focused on their prey that they didn't notice the human vessel until it was almost too late. Jake could see the panic on the tactical display as the raider ships tried to turn and face this new threat. "Fire," Jake ordered. The Resilience's main weapons fired in a coordinated burst. Human military technology was different from what most aliens used. Where other species relied on energy shields and careful positioning, humans built weapons that hit hard and fast. The first Korthok destroyer took the full force of the attack and exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Direct hit. Target destroyed," called out the tactical officer. The other two Korthok ships finally managed to turn toward the human vessel. They opened fire with their own weapons, but the Resilience was already moving. Jake had studied Korthok tactics during his training. They were used to fighting weak merchant ships, not military vessels that could fight back. "Return fire. Target the ship on our left." More weapon fire streaked across space. The second Korthok destroyer tried to dodge, but human targeting systems were too accurate. The alien ship's shields collapsed under the concentrated fire, and explosions rippled along its hull. "Second target is disabled, Captain. They're losing power." The third Korthok ship had seen enough. Without waiting for orders, it turned away from the battle and began accelerating toward the edge of the system. Jake watched it go for a moment, then made his decision. Let them run. We need to help the Zilani ship. The battle was over almost as quickly as it had begun. In less than 5 minutes, the human vessel had destroyed one enemy ship, disabled another, and sent the third fleeing. Jake felt no satisfaction from the victory. He was only relieved that they had arrived in time to save the Zilani traders. "Lisa, open a channel to the Harmony's voice." The main screen flickered, and the image of a Zilani captain appeared. The alien looked like a tall, thin humanoid with large, dark eyes and pale blue skin. Captain Veltar of the Harmony's voice stared at Jake with an expression that was hard to read. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Force vessel Resilience. Are you all right? Do you need medical assistance?" Veltar was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful and formal. "We are grateful for your assistance, Captain Morrison. We have wounded crew members, but our medical systems are still functioning. We can send over medical supplies if you need them," Jake offered. "That would be appreciated." Veltar paused again. "Captain, may I ask why you attacked the Korthok ships without warning them first?" Jake was surprised by the question. "We're attacking your ship. They were trying to kill you." "Yes, but most military vessels would have demanded their surrender first, or at least attempted to negotiate." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Lisa was monitoring communications. Pete was checking the engines, and Dr. Foster was reviewing the sensor data from the battle. They all seemed confused by the alien's question. "Captain Veltar, those ships were raiders. They were attacking innocent traders. There was nothing to negotiate." The Zilani captain's large eyes seemed to grow even larger. "I see. Yes, of course. Thank you again for your assistance." The communication ended, and Jake sat back down in his chair. He noticed that Dr. Foster was watching him with a thoughtful expression. "Something wrong, Doctor?" Amy Foster shook her head slowly. "I'm not sure, Captain, but I think we may have just done something that will have consequences we don't understand yet." 3 weeks after the rescue at Kepler 442, Ambassador Helen Carter walked into the Great Hall of the Galactic Council on the planet Harmony Station. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of different alien species. Helen had attended many council meetings before, but she had never seen the delegates look so nervous. The council chamber was a marvel of engineering. The ceiling stretched high above, made of transparent crystal that showed the stars beyond. Different sections of the chamber were designed for different types of alien life. Some delegates sat in chairs like humans, while others floated in tanks of liquid or rested on heated stone platforms. Helen took her seat in the human observation area. As Earth's primary representative to the council, she was used to being watched by curious aliens. But today felt different. She could feel eyes on her from every direction, and the usual friendly greetings from other delegates were nowhere to be found. Council. Chairman Zexai called the session to order. The ancient alien looked like a tall, graceful bird with silver feathers and bright golden eyes. Zexai had been leading the council for over 200 years, and Helen had always respected his calm wisdom. "We are here today to discuss recent events involving human military forces," Zexai announced. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation system. 3 weeks ago, a human warship engaged Korthok raiders near Kepler 442. The incident has raised concerns among several member species. A delegate from the Vorthok Confederation stood up. The Vorthok looked like large, gray-skinned humanoids with 4 arms and no visible eyes. They navigated using sound and vibration, which made them excellent at detecting lies and hidden emotions. Honored Chairman, the Vorthok delegate said, the human vessel destroyed one Korthok ship and disabled another without any attempt at communication or negotiation. This behavior is extremely concerning, suggests that humans prefer violence. As their first response to any situation, murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Helen felt her stomach tighten. She knew the rescue had been recorded by the Zelani ship's sensors, but she hadn't expected it to cause such a reaction. Another delegate stood up. This one was from the Shimmerer Collective, a species that looked like living crystals. When they spoke, their bodies flashed with different colors of light. The Shimmerers are also concerned, the delegate said, their body pulsing with worried orange light.
Oh.
In our experience, peaceful species always attempt to resolve conflicts through discussion. Only predator species attack without warning. We fear that humans may be more dangerous than we originally believed. Helen started to stand, but Chairman Zexai raised a feathered hand to stop her. We will hear from all concerned parties before allowing responses, he said gently. More delegates spoke up. The Mollusk Confederation was worried about human aggression. The Floating Gardens Republic questioned whether humans could be trusted in peacekeeping roles. Even the normally supportive insectoid hives expressed concern about human military tactics. Helen listened to each complaint with growing frustration. These aliens were describing the rescue as if it had been an unprovoked attack. They seemed to think that Jake Morrison should have stopped to chat with pirates who were actively shooting at innocent traders. Finally, Chairman Zexai nodded to Helen. Ambassador Carter, you may respond to these concerns. Helen stood and looked around the chamber. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and detection organs focused on her. She took a deep breath and began to speak. Honored delegates, I understand your concerns, but I think there has been a misunderstanding. Captain Morrison's actions were not aggressive. They were protective. The Korthok raiders were attacking an unarmed merchant vessel. People were dying. There was no time for lengthy negotiations. The Vorthok delegate made a sound that the translator interpreted as skeptical. Ambassador Carter and civilized space, military vessels announce themselves and demand surrender before opening fire. This is basic protocol followed by all peaceful species. The Korthok were not peaceful, Helen replied. They were pirates attacking innocent people. That does not change proper procedure, insisted the Shimmerer delegate, their body flashing red with agitation. Violence should always be the last option, not the first. Helen felt her own frustration rising. With respect, when someone is shooting at helpless civilians, violence is sometimes the only option. The chamber fell silent. Helen realized that her words had only made things worse. The alien delegates were looking at her with expressions of fear and concern. Meanwhile, on the frontier mining world of New Dakota, Ryan Brooks was dealing with his own problems. Ryan had been a Marine for 10 years before retiring to become a farmer on the colony world. New Dakota was a peaceful place, with wide open spaces and good soil for growing crops. The colonists were mostly families looking for a quiet life away. From the crowded cities of Earth, Ryan was working in his fields when the attack began. The first sign of trouble was the sound of explosions coming from the main settlement. He dropped his tools and ran toward the town, knowing that his wife and children were there. The scene that greeted him was chaos. 3 large ships had landed. Near the settlement, and armed figures in battle armor were moving through the streets. Ryan recognized them immediately as Grimlock slavers. The Grimlocks were another species of raiders, but unlike the Korthok, they specialized in capturing people to sell as slaves. Ryan's military training kicked in. He grabbed his hunting rifle from his house and started moving toward the town center. Other colonists were doing the same thing. These were farmers and miners, not soldiers. But they were not going to let slavers take their families without a fight. The battle that followed was brutal and desperate. The Grimlock slavers had expected easy prey. They were used to raiding worlds where the inhabitants would surrender rather than fight. They had not expected to face humans who would rather die than be enslaved. Ryan organized the colonists into small groups, used farm equipment as weapons, and turned tractors into mobile fighting platforms. The miners brought explosives from their work sites, and the farmers used their knowledge of the local terrain to set up ambushes. The fighting lasted for 6 hours. When it was over, the Grimlock slavers had suffered heavy casualties. Their leader, a massive alien with 4 arms and razor-sharp claws, lay dead in the town square. The surviving slavers fled to their ships and left the planet as quickly as they could. Ryan sat on the steps of the town hall, bandaging a wound on his arm. Around him, the other colonists were treating their own injuries and counting their losses. They had saved their families, but the cost had been high. Captain Steve Walsh of the merchant vessel Free Trader arrived at New Dakota 2 days later. Steve was a trader who bought and sold goods between the colony worlds and the major trade centers. He had visited New Dakota many times before, and he knew the colonists as peaceful, hard-working people. What he found shocked him. The settlement looked like a war zone. Buildings were damaged, and there were scorch marks on the ground where the fighting had taken place. But the colonists were already working to repair the damage, and they seemed surprisingly calm for people who had just survived a major battle. Steve found Ryan at the local tavern, sharing drinks with other colonists and telling stories about the fight. "Ryan, what happened here?" Steve asked. Ryan looked up from his drink. "Grimlock slavers tried to raid the settlement. We fought them off." "You fought them off?" Steve couldn't hide his amazement. "Ryan, the Grimlocks are professional raiders. They've successfully attacked dozens of worlds." "Not this one," Ryan said simply. "They made a mistake. They thought we'd just give up and let them take our families. That was never going to happen." Steve shook his head in wonder. He had heard stories about human stubbornness, but he had never seen it in action. Colonists had faced professional warriors and won through sheer determination and refusal to surrender. When Steve left New Dakota, he carried with him a story that would spread throughout the trade networks. The story of farmers and miners who had defeated professional slavers through courage and determination. It was a story that would add to the growing reputation of human warriors. Back on Harmony Station, Ambassador Helen Carter was still trying to convince the Council that humans were not a threat. But with each passing day, more stories were arriving from across the galaxy. Stories of humans who fought when others would surrender, who attacked when others would negotiate, who never gave up even when facing impossible odds. The aliens were beginning to see a pattern, and it frightened them. In their view, humans were becoming known as the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Representatives from over 50 different species had gathered on Harmony Station to discuss what they were calling the human problem. The great chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates whispered among themselves in dozens of different languages. Chairman Zexai stood at the center of the chamber, his silver feathers ruffled with anxiety. In all his years of leading the council, he had never dealt with a situation quite like this one. The reports about human behavior were becoming more troubling with each passing day. "Fellow delegates," Zexai began, his voice carrying through. "The translation system. We've gathered here to address concerns about the human species and their apparent tendency toward violence. I will now present the evidence that has been collected." The main display screen in the chamber lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared at various locations, marking incidents involving human forces. There were already more than 30 dots, and new ones were being added every day. Counselor Earthoven of the Mollusk Confederation rose from her tank of blue liquid. The mollusks looked like giant sea creatures with multiple tentacles and large, intelligent eyes. They were known throughout the galaxy for their careful thinking and peaceful nature. "Chairman Zexai," Earthoven said, her voice creating bubbles. In her tank, the Mollusk Confederation has analyzed these incidents carefully. In every case, humans have chosen to use deadly force as their first response. This is not the behavior of a peaceful species. The display screen changed to show video footage from the Kepler 442 incident. The delegates watched as the human ship appeared and immediately opened fire on the Korthok raiders. There was no attempt at communication, no warning, no demand for surrender. As you can see, Earthaven continued. The humans destroyed one ship and disabled another within minutes. They showed no mercy and no hesitation. A delegate from the Crystalline Collective stood up next. The Crystallines were tall, thin beings made of living crystal who communicated through light patterns. The collective has also reviewed footage from the New Dakota incident. Human civilians fought against professional military forces and won. This suggests that all humans, not just their soldiers, are trained for warfare from birth. The screen now showed surveillance footage from New Dakota. The delegates could see human farmers using farm equipment as weapons and setting up complex ambushes. Children as young as 10 years old were helping to carry supplies and tend to the wounded. A nervous murmur ran through the chamber. Many of the delegates had peaceful species where children were kept far away from any kind of conflict. The idea of young humans participating in battle was deeply disturbing to them. Captain Ben Rogers of Earth's Diplomatic Corps sat in the human observation section, watching the proceedings with growing alarm. He was a career diplomat who had spent years building relationships with alien species, could see the fear in their eyes and hear it in their voices. The Vorthok delegate stood up again. We have also obtained footage of human recreational activities. The evidence suggests that humans begin military training at a very young age. The screen changed again, this time showing video of human children playing various games. The delegates watched as kids ran around playing tag, hiding during games of hide-and-seek, and competing in sports. Two alien minds that had evolved from prey species, these activities looked like combat training. As you can see, the Vorthok delegate continued. Human children practice stalking, hunting, and combat from the time they can walk. They compete against each other constantly, always trying to prove who is the strongest or fastest. This is not normal behavior for peaceful beings. More footage appeared on the screen. This time it showed human adults participating in sports, like boxing, martial arts, and football. The alien delegates watched in horror as humans deliberately engaged in physical conflict for entertainment. They enjoy violence, whispered a delegate from the Gentle Singers, a species that communicated through musical tones. They actually seek out opportunities to fight each other. Captain Rogers felt sick as he watched the delegates' reactions. Everything they were seeing was being interpreted through the lens of species that had evolved to avoid conflict at all costs. To them, human games and sports look like a society dedicated to warfare. Dr. Kate Sullivan, the Earth's chief expert on alien psychology, was also present at the session. She had been studying the other species in the galaxy for years, trying to understand how they thought and why they behaved the way they did. As she listened to the delegates' fears, she began to see a pattern that shocked her. During a break in the session, Dr. Sullivan approached Captain Rogers. "Ben, I think I know what's happening here," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" Rogers asked. "I've been studying the evolutionary history of all these species. Every single one of them evolved from prey animals. The Zelani descended from creatures that were hunted by larger predators. The Vorthok evolved from small animals that lived underground to hide from threats. The Shimmerers developed from creatures that could change color to blend in with their surroundings." Rogers frowned. "So, don't you see? Every species in this galaxy learned to survive by avoiding conflict. They developed intelligence as a way to hide, to negotiate, to find peaceful solutions. Fighting was always the last resort because fighting meant death." The implications of what Dr. Sullivan was saying began to sink in. But humans evolved from hunters, Dr. Sullivan continued. "We developed intelligence to become better. At chasing down our prey, we learned to work together to track animals across vast distances. We never gave up once we started a hunt." Rogers looked around the chamber at all the alien delegates. "They see us as predators." "Worse than that," Dr. Sullivan said. "They see us as the apex predators of the galaxy, a species that hunts for pleasure and trains their children to be killers from birth." When the session resumed, Chairman Zex High called for testimony from other species who had encountered humans. A trade captain from the Peaceful Wanderers took the podium. His species looked like tall, thin plants with multiple branches instead of arms. "Honored delegates," the captain said, in a voice like rustling leaves. "I was present during a pirate attack on the trade route near Centauri Prime. 3 human ships arrived to help defend the convoy. They did not ask the pirates to surrender. They did not try to negotiate. They simply attacked and destroyed the pirate vessels within minutes." "Did they save the convoy?" asked Chairman Zexai. "Yes, but that is not the point. The speed and efficiency of their attack was terrifying. They moved like they had done this many times before. Like hunting and killing was natural to them." Another witness came forward, this time a mining supervisor from the Asteroid Workers Guild. "I saw humans defend a mining station from raiders, use tactics I had never seen before. They seemed to know exactly how to predict their enemies' movements and set traps. It was like watching natural-born killers at work." The testimonies continued for hours. Every story was the same. Humans appeared, engaged in combat, and won decisively. They never seemed to hesitate, never appeared afraid, never showed mercy to their enemies. Dr. Sullivan whispered to Captain Rogers, "They're not wrong about what they're seeing. They're just wrong about why we do it." "What do you mean, Every?" "One of these incidents involved humans protecting innocent people from attackers. We're not aggressive. We're protective. But 2 species that evolved to run and hide, protection looks exactly like aggression." As the session continued, it became clear that the Galactic Council was reaching a consensus. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Humans were a species of natural warriors who had somehow managed to hide their true nature until now. They were dangerous, unpredictable, and potentially a threat to the peaceful order of the galaxy. Chairman Zexai finally called for order. "We have heard extensive testimony about human behavior. The pattern is clear and consistent. Humans respond to conflict with immediate violence. They train for warfare from childhood. They seem to enjoy combat and competition." He paused and looked directly at the human observation section. "The question before us now is what to do about this situation. How do we coexist with a species that appears to be fundamentally different from all others in the galaxy?" Captain Rogers felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. The fear in the chamber was almost tangible. These beings, who had spent thousands of years building a peaceful galactic civilization, were terrified of the newest members of their community. The session ended without any decisions being made. Captain Rogers knew that something had to be done. The misunderstanding was growing worse every day, and soon it might lead to actions that could destroy any chance of peaceful coexistence between humans and the rest of the galaxy. 2 weeks after the emergency council session, Chairman Zexai sent an urgent message to Earth. The communication arrived at the headquarters of Earth Defense, its command on a quiet Tuesday morning. Admiral Carol Hayes was reviewing patrol reports. When her aide brought her the encrypted message from the Galactic Council, Carol had been expecting some kind of response from the council meeting. Captain Rogers had sent detailed reports about the aliens' growing fear of humanity, but she had not expected what she read in Chairman Zexai's message. The message was formal and carefully worded, but the meaning was clear. The Galactic Council was asking for human military assistance with a crisis that no other species could handle. The irony was not lost on Carol. The same aliens who feared human violence were now asking for help, because they needed that violence. Crisis was happening on a world called Haven's Rest. The planet had been established as a neutral zone where refugees from various conflicts could find safety. Over 3 million beings from dozens of different species lived there, all of them civilians who had fled from wars and disasters across the galaxy. 3 days ago, a large fleet of Korthok raiders had arrived at Haven's Rest. They had quickly overwhelmed the planet's small defense force and taken control of the main cities. The Korthok leader, a brutal warlord named Gazkhan, had sent a message to the Galactic Council with his demands. Gazkhan wanted tribute, not just money or goods, but complete submission from the Council. He demanded that they recognize Korthok, authority over several star systems, and agreed to pay regular tribute to prevent future raids. To show he was serious, he had begun executing hostages. 10 refugees were being killed every day until the council agreed to his terms. The council had tried everything they could think of. They had offered to negotiate, to pay ransom, to provide alternative compensation. Gazgan had rejected every offer. He seemed to enjoy the power he held over the council and the fear he was causing throughout civilized space. After days of failed diplomacy, the council had reached a terrible conclusion. The only way to stop Gazkan was through military force. But their own military forces were designed for peacekeeping and defense, not for attacking a heavily fortified position. They needed warriors, and the only species in the galaxy that seemed capable of such violence was humanity. Admiral LePage read the message 3 times before calling her senior staff together. The situation was complex and dangerous. If humans refused to help, millions of innocent beings would die. If they agreed to help, they would be confirming every fear the aliens had about human nature. The meeting was held in the secure briefing room at Defense Command Headquarters. Present were Captain Rogers, who had just returned from the council station, Dr. Sullivan, and several senior military officers. The council is essentially asking us to prove that we're the violent species they think we are, said Colonel Mark Williams, the head of strategic planning. If we attack the Korthok forces, we'll be confirming their worst fears about us. Captain Rogers shook his head. If we don't help, millions of people will die. The council came to us because they literally have no other choice. None of their species are capable of this kind of military operation. Dr. Sullivan looked thoughtful. There's something else to consider. This might actually be an opportunity to show them who we really are. If we handle this correctly, we might be able to demonstrate that humans fight to protect, not to conquer. Admiral Hayes had been listening quietly to the discussion. Finally, she spoke. The decision has already been made. We're going to help. The question is how we do it. Within 6 hours, Admiral Hayes was aboard the Ed's Liberation, lending a task force of 6 ships toward Haven's Rest. The fleet was large enough to handle the Korthok raiders, but small enough to avoid looking like an invasion force. Hayes had handpicked her crew, choosing officers who understood both the military and diplomatic aspects of their mission. The journey to Haven's Rest took 4 days. During that time, Hayes and her staff planned their approach carefully. They knew they were being watched by representatives from dozens of alien species. Every action they took would be analyzed and judged. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner served as the fleet's tactical officer. He was a career military man who had studied alien cultures and military tactics. As they approached Haven's Rest, he briefed Admiral Hayes on what they might expect. The Korthok have 12 ships in orbit around the planet, Turner reported. They're older vessels, but they're well-armed and have experienced crews. They've also landed ground forces in the major cities and are using the civilian population as human shields. Hayes nodded. What about the hostages? Intelligence suggests they're being held in the main government complex in the capital city. Gascon is keeping them close to his command center, probably as insurance against attack. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Haven's Rest system. Immediately, their sensors detected the Korthok ships orbiting the planet. The raiders had clearly been expecting some kind of response, but they seemed surprised. By the size and sophistication of the human fleet, Hayes ordered her communications officer to open a channel to the Korthok flagship. She had decided to try diplomacy first, not because she expected it to work, but because she wanted the watching alien observers to see that humans were not mindlessly violent. The main screen flickered, and the image of Gazkan appeared. The Korthok warlord was a massive creature with thick gray skin, 4 powerful arms, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. He wore elaborate armor decorated with the bones of his victims. So, Gazkan said in a voice like grinding stone, the council has sent their pet predators to deal with me? I am honored. Hayes kept her expression neutral. I am Admiral Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. I'm here to offer you a chance to withdraw peacefully. Release your hostages and leave this system, and we'll allow you to go without pursuit. Gazkan laughed, a harsh sound that made the speakers crackle. You think I fear your little fleet? I have been raiding and conquering for 50 years. I have defeated species across the galaxy. I'm offering you one chance to avoid bloodshed, Hayes. said calmly. Bloodshed. Gazkhan's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. Human, you speak my language? Yes, there will be bloodshed, but not mine. The Korthok leader leaned forward, his face filling the screen. Do you know what I did yesterday? I had 10 refugees torn apart by my soldiers while their families watched. Today, I will do the same thing. And tomorrow, and the day after that, until the council gives me what I want. Hayes felt something cold settle in her chest. She had hoped that Goskin might be reasonable, that he might be motivated by profit rather than cruelty. But his words made it clear that he enjoyed causing suffering. Like killing innocent people, Hayes said. It was not a question. Lovett Gazkhan replied with obvious pleasure. The weak exist to serve the strong. Those who cannot defend themselves deserve whatever fate they receive. Behind Hayes, Lieutenant Commander Turner watched his admiral's expression change. He had served under Hayes for 3 years and had never seen her look quite like this. Diplomatic mask was slipping away, replaced by something much colder and more dangerous. Admiral Gazkhan continued, Perhaps we can work together. Your species clearly understands the value of strength. Join me, and we can carve up this galaxy. Between us, the weak species will serve us both. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was deadly calm. You made a mistake, Gazkhan. What mistake? You told me that you enjoy murdering innocent people. That changes everything. Gazkhan seemed confused. I do not understand, Hayes said, and cut the communication. She turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Turner, prepare for combat operations. Target all Korthok vessels. We're going to end this quickly. Admiral Turner said carefully. What about the observers? They're monitoring everything we do. Hayes looked at the tactical display showing the Korthok fleet. Let them watch. It's time they learn the difference between a warrior and a predator. Battle for Haven's Rest was about to begin, and it would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. The battle for Haven's Rest began at exactly 1437 Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Hayes had positioned her fleet carefully, using the planet's gravity well to mask her ship's approach. When she gave the order to attack, 6 human vessels moved. As one perfectly coordinated unit, the Korthok raiders had been expecting a traditional space battle with lots of posturing and threats. Instead, they found themselves facing something completely different. The human ships struck with surgical precision, targeting weapons and engines. While avoiding areas that might cause total destruction of the enemy vessels, Lieutenant Commander Turner coordinated the attack from his position on the Liberations. Bridge, primary targets are disabled, Admiral. Korthok fleet is losing power across all ships. On the observation deck of a nearby council monitoring station, representatives from 12 different species watched the battle unfold. They had come to witness human military tactics firsthand, expecting to see the brutal warfare they had heard so much about. Instead, they saw something that confused them. The human fleet was winning decisively, but they were not destroying their enemies. Instead, they were systematically disabling each Korthok ship with minimal damage. They're not killing them, whispered Council Observer Voltai. The same Zilani captain who had been rescued weeks earlier. Ain't. They could destroy the entire Korthok fleet, but they're choosing not to. The space battle lasted exactly 14 minutes. When it was over, all 12 Korthok ships were floating dead in space, their crews alive but helpless. Not a single enemy vessel had been completely destroyed. Admiral. Hayes opened a communication channel to the lead Korthok ship. Gazkhan's face appeared on the screen, but he looked very different now. Arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by confusion and fear. Your fleet is disabled, Hayes told him calmly. You have 2 choices. Surrender now and face trial 4. Your crimes, or we will board your ships and take you by force. This is impossible, Gazkhan snarled. No one defeats the Korthok so easily. You were defeated the moment you decided to hurt innocent people, Hayes replied. What's your answer? Before Gazkhan could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the human fleet. Scanner reports were coming in from the planet's surface. The Korthok ground forces were executing hostages in response to their fleet's defeat. Hayes felt her jaw clench. Turner, Prepare the Marine assault teams. We're going down there. Admiral LeCorthoc have taken positions throughout the city. They're using civilians as shields. Then we go through them. The human Marines had been preparing for this possibility during the entire journey to Haven's Rest. Colonel Nick Parker commanded the ground assault force, and he had trained his troops specifically for urban combat in civilian areas. The Marine landing craft descended through the planet's atmosphere like falling stars. They landed simultaneously at 6 different points around the capital city, creating a coordinated assault that surrounded the Korthok positions. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The human Marines moved through the city like a force of nature, not in the way anyone expected. Each Marine unit was accompanied by medical teams and civilian evacuation specialists. As they advanced toward the government complex where the hostages were being held, they carefully extracted every civilian they encountered. Moving them to safety before engaging the enemy, Colonel Parker led the main assault team toward the central building. The Korthok had set up defensive positions in the lobby, using captured refugees as human shields. Parker knew that one wrong move could result in a massacre. "This is Colonel Parker of the Earth Defense Force," he announced over his loudspeaker. "All civilians get down and stay down. We're here to get you out." The Korthok commander in the lobby laughed. "Humans, you cannot attack us without killing your own people. We have 50 hostages here. Surrender now or watch them die." Parker's response was swift and precise. His Marines had trained for exactly this situation. Using non-lethal sonic weapons and carefully aimed shots, they disabled the Korthok guards in less than 30 seconds without harming a single civilian. The same scene played out throughout the building whenever the Marines encountered hostages. Being used as shields, they found ways to neutralize the threats without endangering the innocent. They moved with a combination of deadly efficiency and careful restraint that seemed impossible to the watching aliens. Within 2 hours, the government complex was secure. All hostages had been rescued, and the surviving Korthok forces had surrendered. The operation had been a complete success with minimal casualties on all sides. Back on the Council observation station, the alien representatives were struggling to understand what they had witnessed. The humans had defeated a notorious raider fleet and rescued thousands of hostages. But they had done it without the mindless violence everyone expected. Dr. Sullivan arrived at Haven's Rest 3 days later as part of the diplomatic team sent to handle the aftermath. She found Admiral Hayes in the temporary command center that had been set up in the capital city. "Carol, the Council wants to meet with you," Dr. Sullivan said. "They're having trouble understanding what happened here." Looked tired but satisfied. "What's to understand?" "We stopped some raiders and saved some people. It's not that simple. The aliens expected you to blast the Korthok fleet to pieces and storm the planet with massive casualties. Instead, you conducted the most precisely controlled military operation in galactic history. The formal debriefing took place in the Council chambers 3 weeks later. Admiral Hayes, Colonel Parker, and Dr. Sullivan sat at a table facing hundreds of alien representatives. The atmosphere was very different from the previous emergency session. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with confusion and something that might have been respect. Chairman Zexai opened the session. "Admiral Hayes, the Council wishes to understand your tactics during the Haven's Rest operation. Our military experts are confused by your methods." Hayes stood up. "What would you like to know? Why did you not destroy the Korthok fleet completely? You had the power to eliminate them entirely, because destroying them wasn't necessary. Our goal was to stop them from hurting people, not to commit genocide." The Vorthok representative spoke up. "But in your previous encounters, humans have shown no mercy to raiders and pirates." "We showed exactly the same mercy we always show," Hayes replied. "None for those who prey on the innocent, but we don't kill unnecessarily." Dr. Sullivan stood and addressed the chamber. "To honored delegates, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature. With your permission, I would like to explain." Chairman Zexai nodded. "Every species in this galaxy evolved from prey animals," Dr. Sullivan began. "You developed intelligence to avoid conflict, to hide from predators, to find peaceful solutions. When you see aggression, you assume it comes from a desire to conquer or dominate. The chamber was completely silent. Humans evolved differently. We were persistence hunters. We developed intelligence to become better at protecting our families and communities. When we see someone threatening innocent people, we don't think about negotiation or retreat. We think about stopping the threat. She gestured toward Admiral Hayes. When humans fight, we're not trying to conquer territory or prove our strength. We're trying to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's why our tactics seem so strange to you. We fight just hard enough to neutralize the threat. Then we stop. The crystalline delegate spoke up, their body flashing with confused colors. But your warriors seem to enjoy combat. You don't enjoy combat, Colonel Parker said, standing up. We enjoy protecting people. The fact that sometimes requires fighting. It's just unfortunate. Captain Morrison, who had been present for the session, added his own perspective. When we rescued the Zilani ship, we didn't hesitate because we like violence. We hesitated because we saw people in danger and knew we had to help them. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as the delegates tried to process this information. Finally, Chairman Zexai called for order. Dr. Sullivan, are you saying that humans are not aggressive warriors, but protective guardians? That's exactly what I'm saying. Humans don't fight for conquest or glory. We fight because we refuse to let innocent people suffer when we have the power to stop it. The silence that followed lasted for several minutes. Finally, the gentle singer delegate spoke in musical tones that conveyed deep emotion. So humans are not predators who hunt the weak. They are guardians who hunt the predators. Yes, Dr. Sullivan said simply. The revelation changed everything. Over the following months, human ships began taking up positions throughout the galaxy, but not as conquerors. They became the guardians of trade routes, the protectors of refugee settlements. The force that pirates and raiders learned to fear. The real reason humans were the most feared warriors in the galaxy was finally understood. They were feared by those who preyed upon the innocent, because humans were the species that would cross infinite space to hunt down predators and protect those who could not protect themselves. In the end, the galaxy's fear of humanity transformed into something else entirely. For the peaceful species, humans represented safety. For those who would harm the innocent, humans had become their worst nightmare.